Hello, everybody, and welcome to Washington Post Story Mode, the show where we discuss the biggest video game news of the week every week, unless we are interrupted by, I don't know, natural disasters or what have you. I'm Washington Post video game reporter Nathan Grayson, and I am joined by the person who edits almost everything I write, Mikhail.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mikhail Klementov. I'm an editor at Launcher, and I am happy to be here.
Are you?
You know, I love streaming. Streaming is seriously awesome. I usually stream Valorant though, so this is a big change of pace for me. I don't
Mhm.
usually stream browser, so this is um you're going to be teaching me all about how to, read the news on
Mhm.
air, do that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Um Yeah, I am a disciple ready to learn.
Well, then, great. I mean, I'm sure that also your skill of clicking heads will be very applicable to kind of this whole realm as well.
I sort of feel that way. Clicking links in a lot of ways is sort of like clicking heads, in that you need speed, you need sort of like browser sense of figuring out where certain tabs are, where certain links are. There's some people who are not good at it, and so I'm excited to learn to apply my skills. Good to be here, truly.
Heck yeah. Also, hello, Real Prism Sword, which is a name. Yes, I read that correctly, I think.
That's
Yes.
right.
Okay, cool.
What's up,
Um,
Prism?
yeah, how's it going? Hey, Buckman. Welcome to the stream. Um, so let's go ahead and get started. So this week, there's yet another major Elden Ring patch, and it changed a lot of things. The one I wanted to start on is, to me, the biggest loss that we experienced in that, which is that basically they've now patched the game such that it's very apparent where the tutorial is. And I think that, I mean, Mikhail, you were saying that you haven't played in a minute, but you probably experienced this, right? Where, like, when you
Hmm.
first start the game, you can kind of take two immediate paths. One of them leads up a stairway, and it is like delineated by trees and kind of all this nice imagery. And then the other way you can go is into a pit. And one of these leads into the game world, sans kind of teaching you important skills and how to deal with everything. And the other one leads to the tutorial. Can you guess which is which?
Yeah, I had this experience when I started playing the game, and I followed the right path, and a friend who I was playing side by side with at the time followed the wrong path. And I remember being really surprised by that.
Mhm.
It seemed super evident to me that you needed to go in the hole because, for me at least, and this actually might be the differentiating factor, when you load into I play on offline mode because I don't
Mhm.
have PlayStation Plus or online or whatever that is,
Mm-mm.
which I realize is a huge loss in the broader context of the world. But in the first steps of the game, you only get one little message on the ground. And it's a message from the
Mhm.
developer that says, jump down, basically,
Yeah.
because there's stuff down there. And so I can imagine, and I don't know this for sure, but I can imagine that if you have online mode activated, you load into the game and there are 100 little messages scattered all over the ground, and they all say
Mhm.
like, "Hi, first guy here," or whatever you can type out,
Mhm.
and you sort of go like, "I don't have time to read all of this. None of this matters. Let me just go toward the door, the one thing that like is recognizable here," and you go that way, and you miss the tutorial. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, and maybe this is atypical, but I read every message on the ground because they are always either like, a little bit funny or, often kind of useful. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, I can't tell you how many traps I've avoided because someone just said trap ahead and it was like, yep. Or like look left. And sure enough, there's just an enemy like spring loaded into the wall, just waiting to fly out at you.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, they can be useful. But in any case, what the patch did to this is that it put up a very obvious sign telling you please go to the tutorial instead of kind of letting the player, I guess, sort of make of that area what they will. And like, I can understand here. Let's see an English version of it. I can understand why they would do this because, I think it was tripping up a lot of people. But it does feel to me like it's kind of not at odds with the Souls type of experience necessarily, but just like, I don't know. I just thought that was a very funny gag. That was like taking the idea of a Souls experience and the kind of like, if not difficulty of them, then at least the hostility of the game world, and extending it to even this like very basic functionality in a way where like you can't help but laugh, right?
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that would like absolutely get sanded out of like a Ubisoft game, for example, where somebody
Mhm.
would recommend it in a meeting and everyone would be like, haha, that's like such a funny idea. We can't do that. There's no way. Or it would get axed like one meeting later. So it was nice to see it here. It feels very like rebellious, slightly like smarter than thou, like art
Right, right.
student thing, which I really dig.
Mhm.
I do kind of have a question for folks in chat because I know there are some like game designers who follow me, who follow you, who follow the launcher Twitter account, and I'm curious if anyone like that is in chat and has like game design feelings about this decision, the change, or what existed before. Um, yeah, if anyone like that is in
Mhm.
chat, I would be curious to get their read on this.
Yeah. In the meantime, Buckman said that they play an offline mode. Yeah, just dev messages for me. I prefer no hints or lies.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. What I would also would be really great, and I mean, again, this is like tweeting my blogs, as we used to say at Kotaku, would be to find a way to talk to the person or people who made the decision to put the tutorial in a hole,
Hmm.
and to be like, A, why did you do that? And B, how do you feel that it's more about it being more clearly signposted now? Was that like a moment where the little part of the dev team that made that decision, when they found out it was going to be more clearly signposted, they're just like, oh man, we worked so hard on that hole.
Yeah. I'm sure they feel that way, but then at the same time, I bet there are so many things in the game that are more important to that team than like the first second of it. That they're like, at this point,
Hmm.
it's out, whatever.
I mean, yes and no. One of the things to keep in mind about game development in general is that in most cases, the first part of the game is the part that's made last.
Mm,
Because generally, what developers do, especially on bigger games, is they take all the lessons they learned from making the rest of the game and use it to ensure that the first part of the game is as sticky as possible, so that they get players to stick around for longer. And so I'm sure something like this, they probably, made it last because they're like, well, we need to make sure that all the lessons or most of the lessons players will need to learn to play later in the game are somehow here. We need to know what those things are first. Um, you know, so
I
I bet they
I
actually put a ton of thought into this, despite how it may seem.
Yeah. I have actually a really funny story about this. And maybe in the context of this story, I'm thinking now maybe this pop up is not such a bad idea. I
Mhm.
was on a reporting trip recently to California and I was hanging out with some developers, and one of them had worked on an RTS years ago. And he was telling me about how shortly before the launch of the RTS he was working on, he was the person who designed the tutorial section, and he was really proud of it. He thought it like played into the themes of the game and the story of the game really well. He was super happy. And he
Mhm.
showed somebody who was not super familiar with RTSs, like, hey, check this out. Like, give me your thoughts. It was too late to make any changes, but I
Mhm.
think this person was like ready to be validated. And the person he showed the tutorial to accidentally like moused to the corner of the screen, which moved the field of view like just into the like fog of war on the map, the stuff you can't
Uh-huh.
see, and they were just lost, not knowing what to do. They were completely like they were just like, is something supposed to happen now? And they just sat looking at the blank screen for like a minute, and then he had to come over and like intervene and be like, all right, actually, to like move the screen around, you have to move your mouse to the side of the screen. And he was so disappointed, and at that point it was too late to change anything. But I wonder how many like new fans came to Elden Ring with this game, or came
Mhm.
to like Souls likes
Yeah,
with
yeah, to the
this game,
series.
and were totally lost because they completely missed the cave. And in that
Mhm.
context, I start to think like, okay, maybe the pop up is, it's funny that it didn't exist, but maybe it's not such a bad idea that it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. It is a fair point, and I think it's especially a thing that they probably began to pay attention to, and they realized just how many new players this particular game was bringing in.
Mm,
Like, I think that while the fandom for the series grew with each installment, in this case it was exponential growth very
mm.
clearly. So I think maybe they looked at that and said, well, okay, we can't be quite as tongue in cheek as we were being before in this regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In terms of other things that have been patched, the other most important thing to me is that Elden Ring has patched patches. Wait, let's see. Elden Ring patches. And yeah,
Great
so
headline.
patches, I know, right?
Very
Um,
good.
yeah, so patches is an in-game NPC. Let's see, he exists pretty early in the game. And let's see. While trying out bug fixes, be sure to head to yeah, if you already progressed far enough. So let's see. I didn't actually. I was just tickled by this headline. I'm not. I'm going to find out the details live in real time, which of course audiences love to see. Um, okay, so let's see. Open area's conspicuously placed chest will prompt patches to ambush you again, but this time around he quickly recognizes you. Oh, okay, so it doesn't like repeat the encounter, and surrenders to avoid another beating. Once he's pacified, he teaches you how to squat low to the ground after you sit at a checkpoint. They're making sure that he doesn't get all caught up in weird continuity errors. Let's see. Yeah, Patch's storyline previously ended at the Shaded Castle, a swampy, poison-drenched fortress. Blah blah blah. It seemed pretty final too. The dude gave you one last quest item and appeared to succumb to his mysterious injuries. I guess the dimension hopping jerk still had some fight left in him after all. That's funny. But yeah, because basically, oh yeah, that's the thing. Is that in every Souls game he's very treacherous. He attacks
Mm,
you. But the Souls community loves him. I think in part because he's not actually very difficult. So, he ambushes you and then you beat him down. And it's one of
oh,
these rare moments in Souls games where you encounter someone more pitiful than you are.
yeah.
So you can't help but find something endearing about him because you're like, I look at you and I see in you reflected myself. Um,
It is so funny what the Souls community like finds endearing, amusing, what becomes like totemic and a meme in that community. Um, a lot of it feels very happenstance. Like it could have just as easily not become a meme if like the timing was slightly wrong on like the Reddit post that revealed this thing to everyone.
mhm.
Um, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. So there's that. And then just in general, like this was another big patch. And I pulled this up not really to dig into the details that much because a lot of it is fairly granular. But to more focus on the idea that, once again, like this is the game's like how many major patches has it had now? Like it's a 1.04, so presumably four.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, the game at this point kind of like, the developers are almost treating it like not exactly like an MMO, but almost in that, they have been very open to patching builds that are overpowered, bringing other builds that maybe are underpowered up to speed, making sure that things that were maybe a little bit bugged, or kind of, a little bit too off the beaten path,
mm.
that didn't function quite right. They all work well, and it's just interesting to watch because I think that this goes hand in hand. It's this big social experience, and like after a certain point, that almost like even if you're not in the same game world as other players at all times, it becomes MMO like, right? Like where do we draw the line
Mm.
between a predominantly single player game and a very social, kind of single player game and an MMO? Like
I
what
mean,
after a certain point, it feels like there stops being a distinction.
yeah, one thing I'm curious about is there a comparable single player game that has, that level of multiplayer and interactivity in it? To my like nothing comes to mind for me that is similar to Elden Ring to that extent where like yeah, a build can ruin the experience if you are doing PvP with someone or a
Mhm.
build can like seriously ruin the like developer's intent for the game. Um, I'm struggling to think of a single player game in the past 5 years that really fits the bill. So I'm not
Mhm.
surprised that these kinds of patches are starting to come up, that they're becoming more frequent, and that also that people are reacting, in a pretty measured way to them. Just like it's not game ruining, it's not anything else like that. It's just okay, this feels pretty normal for a game like this.
Right, right. Of the times, it's just
Mhm.
that after it's what a lot of games do. They come out and like they're maybe not live service games exactly, but like they have incorporated elements of that style of game simply because like it's what people expect now. They
Mm.
expect a game to come out and sort of be this regularly updated, or at least like pretty frequently updated it at the outset, if not for its lifetime experience.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that like it's just cool to see. It's interesting to see in a game like Elden Ring because this series has spent so long being so kind of opaque, and so like difficult to see behind the scenes of. And now they're treating it in this way where it's like, well, we're kind of gonna let you know what's changed to some extent. So, but I mean, it seems to be working for people. I don't think anyone's like, oh man, you've ruined the mystique.
Yeah. I I need to get back into Elden Ring. I had spoiler alert for the folks who are watching, for our readers. We're putting together a like game of the year so far story, and I've been looking at that list of games, and I'm just like, oh my god, I still have to play like, or I don't know if I have to play it, but like
No, you do.
Horizon's on there, Elden Ring I have to play. There's I won't spoil the whole list, but there's a lot of stuff on there where I'm like, I can't believe I haven't played this yet. Stuff that no one on the team has played yet, but that we should probably get to, like Norco or maybe
I
Tunic.
just downloaded that.
Yeah,
I'm very excited to check that out.
that game looks really cool, and it's already April, and I feel like all I've played this year is a tiny bit of Elden Ring, and then a lot of the stuff that is just like comfort food for me.
Hmm.
Oh well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting year in terms of releases and like the number of games we've gotten that are very good, but also that aren't necessarily super duper big. Aside
Mm,
from Elden Ring, which has just kind of, I think, sucked the oxygen out of the room.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, moving on from Elden Ring, which is sucking the oxygen out of the room in the stream too. Let's see. Let's switch over to, I think, another, maybe the biggest kind of non within a game story of the week,
Yeah.
which is that Nintendo, previously kind of outside of, I think, this realm of labor related issues in games, at least insofar as they had been directly discussed, was accused of union busting in a labor complaint this week.
Mm,
And so yeah, this is interesting on the basis that, again, we'd seen a lot of more Western companies and even Japanese ones and Sony get kind of caught up in this because the video games industry, as we well know, is pretty riddled with labor issues. But yeah, I think that a lot of people kind of looked at Nintendo as like, well, Nintendo must be better, right? Like they make so many bright, happy, fun, polished games. Those must be made by people who are in a good place physically and mentally. And then also the other part of it is just I think Nintendo kind of is more of a black box than a lot of other studios and publishers and companies. And so, like, even if people suspected, maybe something's happening over there, it wasn't as apparent just because you don't really hear directly from Nintendo workers, I think, as much as you hear from them at other companies.
yeah, Nintendo's culture in terms of like what you can glean from coverage, it is very closed off to press. You don't have a very it feels very monolithic. Like you I know that we've tried to kind of negotiate changes to embargo schedules, and I think that works more with some developers. And with Nintendo it's like, well, this complaint is going to go into the shredder, like they don't care, it's Nintendo, like they are a complete black box. You don't really know of, or at least this is the case for me. I don't know if this is true across the board. I
Mhm.
can't think of a Nintendo developer outside of like the one or two figureheads that they have like leading particular franchises. Whereas for other studios, like there are people who, they're on Twitter, they're very actively like, I'm a member of Sony Santa Monica, I'm a member
Mhm.
of, this team, I'm working on this game and that. Um, and so Nintendo has managed to kind of seemingly avoid this kind of scrutiny. And this really feels like the first news in a long time of this nature to relate to Nintendo in any way.
Mhm. Yeah. And so, I mean, this is also interesting in that it concerns Nintendo of America, and Nintendo in America, in a lot of cases, also works within, the realms of publishing and promotion and marketing and
Mm,
stuff like that. But yeah, so the basis of it is Nintendo and Aston Carter, which is another company, a recruiting firm. received a letter from the NLRB with a copy of the complaint stating that the companies would be investigated. So there's an investigation process that's going to be happening now. Both companies in this case were accused of discharging an employee within the last 6 months for joining or supporting a union and engaging in protected labor activities, which include discussing wages or terms of employment. They were also said to have surveilled employees, according to the complaint. Um, yeah, which is, these are, as ever, very big accusations,
Hmm.
and are interesting for a number of reasons. One of them is that they specifically say, that this happened within they say that this happened within the last 6 months. And, that timing overlaps pretty well with kind of a lot of recent union discussion within
Hmm.
video games, especially as a result of what has happened at Activision Blizzard and Raven and companies like that. And again, this is speculation, but you could, I think, reasonably infer that maybe other companies are also, looking at what's happening at places like Activision Blizzard and Raven,
Hmm.
and whatnot, and saying like, I don't know if we want that kind of a thing in our ranks. So let's maybe kind of quietly maneuver such that we can squelch this before, the spark becomes a fire.
Yeah, it's interesting. There, we got a response from Nintendo, I believe, today,
Yep.
and they
Yeah,
basically
we've
just said,
Yeah, it's actually
"Yeah,
right here. They said, we're aware of the claim, which was filed with the National Labor Relations Board by a contractor who was previously terminated for the disclosure of confidential information and for no other reason, is what Nintendo says.
hmm,
Nintendo is not aware of any attempts to unionize or related activity and intends to cooperate with the investigation conducted by the NLRB. And then, yeah, just more, we're committed to welcoming, supportive, blah, blah, blah. Kind of the
yeah,
boilerplate at the end.
I wonder. It doesn't make any sense to speculate, but it is such a specific, or the complaint is about unionization and Nintendo coming back and saying we don't know anything about a union or union related activities at Nintendo of America. I don't know. Make of that what you will. The one thing I do want to kind of call back that you mentioned earlier that I thought was smart and is like
Mhm.
a bit of a hobby horse of mine. I think people sometimes forget that video game companies are made up of more than just developers. And you
Mhm.
alluded to this when you were talking about Nintendo of America. And a lot of times, these complaints, I don't want to say a lot of times, but these complaints can originate from folks from marketing departments,
Mhm.
from the legal side of things, from there are all sorts of people that fall under the umbrella of a video game company. It reminds me of the really kind of grim and unfortunate incident mentioned in the DFEH's filing about Activision, where they had talked about somebody who had died by suicide
Mhm.
years ago. And that person was not a game developer, was not on the game dev side whatsoever. I believe that was a marketing executive, not like
Mhm.
tied to the game dev crunch discussion that I think traditionally is what comes to mind when people think about labor complaints and labor violations regarding video game companies. So all to say, I'm like glad you brought up that Nintendo of America has a lot to do with promotion and
Mhm.
not necessarily like game design or the stuff we traditionally think of when we talk about game developers.
Right, right. But yeah, and a lot of this, as everybody kind of in this article points out, the person in question was a contractor,
Mm,
which is its own whole different thing, but also ties back into the unionization argument because in some ways that makes it easier to unionize. That a lot of the people at Raven who are interested in unionizing are contractors at a QA studio, so yeah, same. There are a lot of like little elements to this that kind of tie back into what has been happening in the industry at large.
mm,
Um, but yeah, let's see. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Um, just insofar as again, it tends to be such that when one or two people talk about things like this, then you get more. To wit, there were actually, and let me see if I can. Let's see, what's a good way to? There were. Well, I'll just mention them, but not by name. There were a couple people after this news broke who on Twitter were like, "Yeah,
hmm
I also worked for Nintendo of America. It was a disaster,
yeah,
and like there were all these labor related issues while we were there." Um, and like these people are so outraged by what happened there that they've been like going on Twitter being like, I'm willing to talk on record, I will sing for whoever reaches out to me.
Yeah.
So all of that is to say that what Nintendo is saying here, may or may not end up holding, may or may not hold up to scrutiny. We'll see.
Yeah. What I find kind of fascinating is that I remember this was pre-pandemic because I remember us publishing were in the office, so it must have been late 2019, early 2020. There's a very early launcher story about I want to say it was a GDC survey, and
Mhm.
it was about unionization in the industry. And the results were that a majority wanted unionization. But
Yep.
then when you asked them whether they thought unionization was going to actually happen, same majority was like, no, it's probably never going to happen. And the tide has really shifted over the past like year and a half, I would say, with
Hmm.
one of the big inciting incidents being what's happening with Activision, what's happening with Raven. It feels like a sea change from a couple years ago.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's happening at Activision, what's happening at Raven, and then what is happening in the country more broadly.
Mm,
You see unionization happening at Amazon warehouses, at
yeah.
Starbucks,
Hmm.
at these things that are, household names.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing to have it happening at major game studios, or at least people at major game studios and publishers trying to make it happen. It is another thing to see it happen week after week at places that like people go to on a daily basis, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's always a broader sea change, and
Hmm.
especially in the case of unionization, where the entire point is solidarity between worker groups, no matter how disparate. The more places unionize, the better it is for everybody,
Hmm.
because it's just kind of a domino chain. It just keeps on happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think you're right. It is the feeling around it is completely different than it was even just a year or two ago.
Hmm.
But let's see. Moving on from that to something still related because it's Blizzard. So Blizzard announced a new World of Warcraft expansion this week, which is notable for a number of reasons. I mean, first and foremost, being that just aside from Overwatch 2 related stuff, this is kind of the first major Blizzard related announcement in the wake of everything that has been happening there
Yeah.
recently, both in terms of unionization efforts and also in terms of widespread sexual harassment and other sorts of allegations. So yeah, I mean, in addition to all of that, I think that just World of Warcraft has been going through maybe its lowest low ever,
Mm,
and that people were kind of, not really into what it was doing previously to this. A lot of major influencers and even just players had moved over to Final Fantasy 14
mhm,
and found an MMO that they liked more in that. A lot of lapsed WoW players also moved over to Lost Ark. And so this is kind of Blizzard's return salvo in a bunch of different ways. And so, yeah, what we got is dragons. Not just any dragons, bipedal dragons that
mhm.
I'm sure are going to please the furry community.
Yeah, looking at those pictures, you can't help but imagine the art that you'll inevitably see like filter across your Twitter feed at some point. Someone's going to retweet a picture, and you're gonna, oh, okay, like didn't I wasn't thinking about that corner of the internet until
Hmm.
now, but there it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, like, it's this interesting thing because people love dragons. World of Warcraft has had many dragons in its mythos over the years. They have predominantly, almost exclusively, been bosses. For example, this one over here looks a little bit like Deathwing, who is kind of one of the major enemies in early WoW
mm,
expansions. He's the giant dragon responsible for reshaping the continent of Azeroth when he like awoke and basically opened a giant rift in the entire game world, which
mm,
was really cool, or at least it was a really interesting idea. It was kind of, the reception to that expansion was mixed, but it basically scrambled the entire game world that people knew. But yeah, so like this is kind of the first time where it's been like, okay, now aside from like mounts that you can fly on when you kind
mm,
of hit the level cap, like now players are dragons. Now players get to be them, which is a new twist. And like I saw an editorial, and I think on PC Gamer that was like, if anything can get WoW players to come back, it's probably dragons.
yeah,
And like, yeah, I think that's a relatively good read on the situation. I don't know if it will work. I think that Blizzard is kind of in a difficult space right now, not just because their reputation is in the toilet,
yeah,
but also because I think that in both the cases of Overwatch and World of Warcraft, like it might just be too little too late, just
Yeah.
because people have so many options right now. So many games that cater to kind of, what they wanted and liked out of Blizzard's games, that it's like, man, if you want them to come back to kind of, these games that feel a little bit old hat at this point, you really got to give them just everything you possibly can.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this meets that level of expectation.
This sort of without having the like deep WoW context, this
Hmm.
feels like a perfectly fine announcement if the Activision Blizzard news had never come out. It's like there was a period when there was like art coming out that was clearly intended for like a Hillary Clinton presidency, and it just arrived in a completely different world. And this sort of feels like that, where I remember in the weeks after the DFEH filing came out or was first reported on, um, there were a number of content creators who said, like, I'm done with WoW. I'm not covering this game anymore. And in as much as I think a lot of that was principle, I think for a lot of those people, it was just like the on ramp existed for a long time of like, WoW is frustrating. The stuff that's happening in this game is no longer enjoyable. Like, I don't get this. Like, it is just not good enough for me to invest my time in anymore. Um, and a lot of people just kind of hopped off board. And I don't really see this as a way of bringing them back. It feels
Right.
like, as you said, too little, too late.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to fully downplay like
Hmm,
the kind of new race that they're adding to the game, because it is
sure.
interesting. And I think that if nothing else, we're probably going to see, a lot of players come back to give it a try. Because
Hmm,
like what they're doing here is, so the Drakthir, as they're called, are a class tied to, or a race tied to a class, and vice versa. As it says here. In Dragonflight, Drakthir can only play as evokers, which is a new class, and
hmm,
evokers can only play as Drakthir. And that's different than WoW, because like in early World of Warcraft, there were some race class restrictions, but they weren't even they were never as strict as this. And then like also, this is still modern WoW. So like in early WoW, you could only you could only play as certain races if you were on certain sides, if you're Alliance or Horde. And so there were some classes that were like restricted to either side, that kind of a thing. This is across the board. So Alliance or Horde, you can play as Drakthir. But again, Drakthir can only be evokers. And then the other
hmm.
side of this that is interesting is that evokers are a ranged class, and there's never been like a fully ranged class in World of Warcraft. You could argue that like mages are mostly ranged, but yeah. So this is as far as things go, it's pretty different, and like it's different enough that I think it probably ticks the boxes for lapsed players to say, well, I mean, I'll give it a try. What this
Hmm.
also translates to, and this is going to be very funny, I think, when the expansion drops, is, I mean, I think that you're going to log into WoW and see nothing but dragons. Like, there's not going to be a
Yeah.
single player who's playing another race. It's just going to be all people trying to level one of these.
Oh, yeah. Prism was right from a couple minutes ago. He said Scalies are eating today. That's right.
Man, Scalies. Oh, wow. I did not have chat up, so I missed a lot. I apologize. I'm going to read all of this now. Let's see. Also, one thing I don't get about dragonflights, you can fly dragons now. When we can fly dragons already, right? Because they're already mounts that you can just fly.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, yeah. Technically, hunters are also pretty ranged. Um, let's see. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so I mean, like, there's some technicalities here in terms of like this being a first or not. Which is
Hmm.
the other problem I think for a game like WoW, is when a game has been around for this long, how many things can really be firsts? Like,
Yeah.
how much of you? At what point do you just hit like not the bottom of the barrel necessarily, but like, at what point can when do you reach a point where your gameplay, where the core gameplay can't really incorporate like more overwhelmingly new ideas without just breaking?
Yeah. The other thing is that like you reach this weird um equilibrium maybe of like the game is so big that it can't support anything that is a genuine departure from what
Mhm.
existed before, and it is also so big that it can't bring in new players. Like if I see this news and I go, wow, World of Warcraft looks really neat. I want to get into that.
Mhm.
There is so much stuff in this game that personally, at least, I would feel super overwhelmed right off the bat. I would like not know where to begin. I
Mm.
would feel totally lost. And so it's this weird, like the game can't evolve. And
Right.
also the game is so big that like it probably isn't bringing in that many new players.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, it becomes this issue of just like, how do we retain people, right?
Yeah.
And it's also interesting because I think that you see a lot of games starting to have this problem of like, how do we attract new players when we exist at this scale and have been around for this long? Like, I mean, I think that the other big example is Destiny 2, right?
Hmm.
And like their approach has been very controversial in that they've been like, okay, well, we have all of this content, that has existed for a long time, but how do we create a smooth on ramp into our newer stuff?
Hmm.
And their solution has been we remove things. We just vault a bunch of campaigns so that we can say, like, okay, new players, you start here. We're going to have like kind of a newer campaign that maybe mentions older elements of the story, but then like at the same time, it doesn't really entirely manage to do that. So you have like
Hmm.
new players coming in, not being able to experience either crucial story elements or just campaigns that were really good.
Yeah.
And then like that's in the name of getting everyone up to sort of the same place and allowing people to interact with each other. But it's also like the value proposition there isn't always amazing. In some cases, it's like it's hard not to think about everything that people have lost.
Yeah. It's I feel kind of bad about the Destiny 2 approach because they recently, maybe not so recently anymore. What is time at this point? But they got rid of the campaign in which that centers around Cade. I'm trying to. I don't know if it makes sense to be wary of spoilers about like a however many year old game and a
Mhm.
campaign that
I mean,
was very
yeah.
explicit about what happens to Cade at the beginning of it. It's not even like
Mhm.
a thing that happens at the end. But they got rid of that, and I remember that being the campaign that a lot of people were like, "Oh my god, this is the starting gun for Destiny 2." The stuff that came before, oh, it was fine.
Mhm.
This is like this feels like what Destiny 2 is supposed to be. And
Yeah.
that is gone now. And I recently tried to get back into Destiny 2, and they were doing that thing where, yeah, they just kind of dropped me off at new content.
Mhm.
And it did not feel like a great on ramp. There was a lot of like lore stuff that I felt like I was missing. Or was talking
Mhm.
about characters and events that, having played the first couple of campaigns of Destiny 2, like even that did not prepare me for what I was getting into. So I don't know that that approach has been kind of validated. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and like especially in a game like Destiny 2, and I think this is a problem that World of Warcraft suffers from as well. Like there are just so many proper nouns. There are so
Yeah.
many like important pieces of lore and history that like characters just casually kind of mention. And you're
Hmm.
like, what? Who? When? Like, did I see this?
Yeah.
And like it's hard to know if you did or didn't. Like it's hard to know if you're like if you personally missed something or if the game didn't show you something. And
Yeah.
like that's just not a good place to be in when you're playing a game. To be like, wait, did I do it wrong?
Yeah.
Is that being communicated to me or what? But yeah, let's see. Another thing I don't understand, how is Activision Blizzard actually going to continue to support new content? Like they already have three separate dev teams working on WoW proper, WoW Classic, and WoW Burning Crusade. Well, now and also they're going to launch this year WoW Lich King Classic as well.
Mm.
I mean, I think they're just going to hire a lot of people probably. Let's see. Yeah, Blizzard tried doing stat crunching or whatever to try and fix it, but that's a fair feeling of trying to beat the feature creep backwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at this point, World of Warcraft has tried everything, because like it has been around and has been consistently upgraded or updated longer than most other successful MMOs on the block. So if nothing else, they're the canary in the coal mine for all of these problems. The problem with that analogy is that the canary often dies. Um, I mean, the canary also doesn't often have millions and millions and millions of dollars. So I think it's going to be all right. But
Yeah.
um, let's see. Are there that many people playing to support that? I mean, yeah. I mean, it is still World of Warcraft. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think their numbers have dipped pretty drastically compared to, the high points of even a few years ago. But I think that As ever, an important thing to keep in mind is that not many players for World of Warcraft is still a lot of players for many other games.
Yeah.
So,
God,
we'll see where all that goes.
it makes me wonder. I haven't thought about this in a while. What are the numbers for New World looking right now? And I don't feel I don't care if they're bad. There's a piece that I'm working on about the kind of like weird analytics culture that's come up around game concurrent numbers. I don't know that it's that useful to track that sort of thing. I'm just
I mean,
curious.
I'm actually excited for that piece. That's a really good idea.
It,
Um,
New World is just like it's just dropped from the conversation completely. And I
mhm.
remember when it came out, it was like heralded as like, oh, Amazon like finally did it.
Right, they
Um,
finally figured it out, they finally
yeah,
cracked the code. Yeah. To answer your question, the 24-hour peak for the game on Steam was 28,249 concurrent players.
sure.
Its all-time peak from around launch was 913,000. So, I mean, pretty steep drop-off,
Hmm.
but I think if we pull out to, like, the last 1 month, yeah, I mean, it's consistent. It has a consistent player base, albeit
Yeah.
one that is significantly smaller than, what it started at.
Sure. That's
Like, I mean,
I
yeah.
also yeah, that's probably not that bad. I guess I wonder whether these are you were talking before about like bad numbers for WoW or good numbers for any other game, and I'm
Right.
wondering if like 30,000 concurrent for New World is bad for an Amazon game versus like this would be great for some other game. I have no idea.
Mhm.
But I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, so the other thing is like with World of Warcraft, we don't get as many direct numbers because it's not on Steam or
Mhm.
a service that discloses numbers that way. So like yeah, as of 2022, around 4.8 million people subscribe to World of Warcraft. I mean, that's again pretty big drop off. At its peak, even a handful of years ago, it was closer to 10 million. Um, but yeah, I mean, like you know, for WoW, that's not great numbers, but I mean, for any game with an active subscriber base, like people paying money every month, that is enormous.
Yeah.
Like I'm not sure if there are many games that have like a subscription based client that pull those kinds of numbers. Period.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's still a cash cow. But then the other thing to compare that to, if we really want to get into it quickly, it's like pull up Steam stats,
Mhm.
which this is the official stat page provided by Valve. And like, if you want to see the top games performing in terms of concurrence, like I mean, New World still occupies the top like 30,
Huh.
somewhere in there, top 30, top 40. I mean,
I
like
think
it's not doing amazing compared to where it started out, but like
yeah.
it's still you could make a convincing argument just numerically that it's one of the top games on Steam.
Yeah. Being in the realm of like Warframe and Stardew Valley is not a bad maybe it is not an Amazon place to be, but it is
Right.
objectively a fine place to be. It is
Oh
nuts
yeah.
to me that Team Fortress 2 is where it is though, now that I'm
I
looking
know,
at
right?
this.
Yeah, I know. It like never gets official updates.
Yep.
Is not in the conversation at all.
No.
It's like an entirely insular, self-sustaining community.
Yeah.
And this after it weathered years of like racist bot spam,
yeah.
like all these bots just going into matches, ruining games from a gameplay perspective and a social perspective.
Yeah.
And yet, a community big enough for there to currently be almost 100,000 concurrent players managed
Yeah.
to somehow sustain itself.
Do we know that it has weathered that period or if it's still in it? Because I
Um,
remember hearing about that and then never really following up, and I was just like, "Yeah, Valve's not going to do anything about this. Why
I
would they?"
so Valve did eventually like I think go after the bots.
Mm,
I'm not sure how effective they were, but I know that they like made a concerted effort to do something. Let's see.
okay.
Have you heard of the critically acclaimed copy pasta Final Fantasy 14 with an expanded free trial plate of spaghetti?
Thank you,
Can't
Prism.
say that I have, but I'll have to check it out. But yeah, that's the other thing. Is like, I mean, Amazon can't be too unhappy because Lost Ark still has
Oh
the
yeah,
peak today. I mean, it's the third place game on Steam. Peak today was 431,000.
yeah.
Like, I mean, they're doing great. They're
Oh
not
yeah.
too worried. I don't think you got two games in Steam's top 40. You're doing all right. Um,
I just realized maybe this has been in front of me, just staring me in the face forever.
hmm.
But PUBG Battlegrounds.
Yeah.
It's called Player Unknown's Battlegrounds
Battlegrounds, Battlegrounds.
Battlegrounds.
Uh-huh.
What is that just how Steam categorizes it, or is that the actual surely that can't be the it's not like it's doing ATM machine. Like, that can't be right.
Um, yeah, good. I'm trying to remember if they broke it off into multiple clients, but I don't think so. That
Huh,
would be a justification for it, right?
I
Just be
guess
like, well,
so.
this is one client, and then we have other PUBG somewhere else. But I don't think. Well, here, let's do it because you got me curious, and because we have nothing but time. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
there's just PUBG Battlegrounds. Maybe it's supposed to be relative to like mobile PUBG and things like that, but I think that those clients are intertwined too. So yeah, I couldn't. Well, let's see. Wait, squad up and
Hmm,
join the battlegrounds for the original battle royale experience that only PUBG battlegrounds. Yeah, no, I think it's just a branding thing. It's a
okay.
weird branding thing, but I think it's
Yeah,
purely branding.
very
Battlegrounds,
strange.
battlegrounds.
Alright. More power to 'em. Okay.
You know,
I'm
we
I'm not
should
a marketing
change.
genius. I
We should change Washington Post name to WaPo colon Washington Post.
yeah.
WaPo colon Washpo colon Washington Post.
WaPo L colon launcher. So Washington Post launcher.
Yes, I love it. Get me Jeff on the phone right now.
I mean,
We're doing a rebrand.
if it works for the number 3 game on Steam, like, surely or number 4, whatever it is, number 5, doesn't
And it
matter.
should work for the
Surely it'll work for
soon to
us.
be number one publication in America.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously.
All right. Well, fantastic. We figured this out.
Mhm.
Speaking of Blizzard, even though this is not Blizzard anymore, but we were talking about them, so this
Mm.
counts as a segue. I would be remiss if we didn't mention the latest news involving more malfeasance at the company or more alleged
Mm.
malfeasance. So yeah, apparently, um, Facebook's Sheryl Sandberg pressured the Daily Mail to shelve a potential article about her then boyfriend, Activision Blizzard's Bobby Kotick, that was not flattering in regards to him. Let's see. Yeah, here's the
Mm.
quote pulled up by Jason Schreier. Bobby Kotick's ex said she informed Kotick their relationship was over because of what she said was his bullying and controlling nature. He then showed up at her. Sorry, I'm looking around my camera. Showed up at her Los Angeles home uninvited and tried to get in, prompting her to call the police, according to the declaration. Which, again, if true, is some gnarly stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the Wall Street Journal's reporting on Kotick has been
It's been top
I
tier.
yeah, it's been
Yeah.
very solid. They've been uncovering, like, consistently new information. This
Hmm.
but I don't really have any reason to think, like, "Oh, like, maybe this isn't true." Just I don't know. I kinda trust them
Yep.
on this beat. So it also tracks with Shannon and another reporter on the sports team whose name escapes me right now wrote a long story
Oh,
about
yeah, Joe Town.
Kotick and his behavior around lawsuits and just scrapping
Hmm.
over small sums of money. And that seems, perfectly consistent with what's described in this story, temperamentally at least. So
Hmm.
that's the reporting. That's what it
Yeah.
shows.
And I mean, this also, like, if true, then you kind of, once again have another data point that
Mm,
sort of makes the culture of Activision Blizzard, again, as alleged, as talked about by employees, make additional sense, right?
mm,
If the person in charge of the whole shebang is willing to act this way interpersonally, then you suddenly can understand why he's maybe willing to overlook some of the more glaring cultural flaws at his own company,
yeah.
because they are quite in line with his behavior. And, you always have to understand that when you start hearing about something like this taking place at the kind of, middle of the company,
Hmm.
or even within upper management, within a portion of a company, then like you can reasonably infer that there is similar behavior potentially unfolding with people who are more directly in charge.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think this is the kind of thing that says, because it's
Yeah.
always like it's easy, I think, after a certain point to be like, oh, this is a problem that is, you know, it's just taking place. It's relegated to a specific portion of the company, but we root that out, and then we're safe, we're healthy, we're good.
Yeah.
And like, no, these issues are systemic, and when issues are systemic, then they tend to be unfolding at tons of different levels.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, I mean,
Mike just reminded me the co-writer on that piece, Gus Garcia Roberts, very
mm,
good writer, sports investigative writer at the Post. Look
right,
him up in general. His whole back catalog is great. That's his name. Thank you for the assist, Mike. The thing that I find, to go back to this Wall Street Journal story, the thing that I find really interesting, and the kind of line that they're very careful about, is that they don't know whether Sheryl Sandberg leaned on her role at Facebook when
mm,
she was talking with the Mail. Um, and to a certain, I understand their hesitation, or maybe not hesitation, but like how that maybe gets a bit hazy. But
mm,
when you're at that echelon of leadership, when you are a recognizable figure at one of the world's biggest companies, like, surely any leverage you throw around, I don't want to say comes with like an implicit threat, but like you sort of have to recognize the fact that you are coming from a certain institution, from a
right,
certain like level of leverage. I don't know. I
right. You're
understand
not
the Wall
just
Street. Yeah,
Yeah, you're not just one person saying,
exactly.
"Hey, could you do me personally and nobody else a favor?"
Yeah.
And, maybe not running the story. Yeah, as the Wall Street Journal story says, people who worked closely with Miss Sandberg at the time said a direct threat would have been out of character, but that even a phone call from her would have likely been viewed with alarm given
Mm,
Facebook's influence in the news business. Because that's the other thing is, I mean, it's not just Facebook. It's not just like, hey, yeah, they're this big thing in our society. It's more specifically that Facebook is one of the biggest drivers of news on the planet at this point.
mhm,
And like if you're running in and this is some like how the sausage gets made stuff for people watching. But I mean, like, if you are in the news business in this day and age, you are heavily reliant on Facebook. Not quite as much so as you were maybe like 5 years ago. But I mean, it's still a massive driver of traffic. And like especially, some websites are pretty directly plugged into Facebook so that they load faster on the platform,
mhm.
that kind of a thing. So they appear on Facebook's like own, news pages and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, the prospect of getting a call from somebody this high ranking at Facebook is like, you know, I mean, like they're saying, it may not be a direct threat, but there's so much implied that it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So all in all, understand like the analysis that the Wall Street Journal applies, which is that like exactly what you just read, that the threat would have been out of character. Like, you still can't really separate the person from the company, especially
Mhm.
at that level. Like, if Mark Zuckerberg gave you a call, you would not think like, oh, like, entrepreneur Mark Zuckerberg
Right.
reached out to me. You would think like Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, the face of the company. So
Right.
I don't know. Probably not worth dwelling on any longer, but that is kind of an interesting dynamic that you see playing out in the piece of like,
Mhm.
well, it probably wasn't an explicit threat, but a person at that level, maybe carries an amount of leverage that either they're not considering, or maybe they are, but that's always there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you are at that level, I don't know how you can not consider the level of influence you have because I imagine just like operating in that world and living that life, you probably use that level of influence to open doors every day.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you forget that that's the reason why those doors open for you. But
Mm,
I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine there's a way to not be cognizant of it. And I think that anybody who, at that level of power who says they weren't aware, is on some level being disingenuous. Like
yeah.
you must be. It's your whole life.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, let's see. Let's get into some slightly lighter news now that we're, I think, mostly out of the heavy stuff.
Let's do it.
So we have a couple of different entries in the ongoing saga of Hollywood kind of, merging its assets with video games.
Hmm.
And so one is that apparently the Minecraft movie is going to star Jason Momoa, which is an interesting pairing. I don't really know how exactly that would work in terms of what role Jason Momoa, noted large man, would occupy
Yeah.
in the universe of Minecraft. Maybe he'll play the Ender Dragon or something. I don't know. Um, but this is what is being reported by the Hollywood Reporter. Tends to be a reliable source of information on Hollywood. It's in the name.
Hmm.
So yeah, here we go. What do we think of more A-list talent in video games?
As I was reading, or I guess screenshots of this article on Twitter, because I never read it myself, Um, I was shot. Every additional detail like pulled me down additional rabbit holes. The fact that the movie's being directed by the person behind Napoleon Dynamite, for one, is like very funny to me. That was like Jason Momoa is the on ramp, and then that is like it's the setup and punchline. Um, but yeah, I don't know why I sort of in my head already kind of imagined that they would just get Chris Pratt for it. All like not a joke. I'm being completely serious. In my head, I was just like, oh yeah, surely he is going to be like Minecraft Steve or whatever. And you
Right,
can
right,
see his perfectly like standard normal Hollywood voice coming out of animated Minecraft Steve. I
right.
don't understand where Jason Momoa figures into this whole picture. His voice does not naturally resonate to me as Minecraft Steve, but maybe that's a thing that'll happen. Um, it's yeah, I'm curious to see how this shakes out.
I mean, I think at this point, just like, give me a movie where it is a Minecraft world, fully in that graphical style. I think there's no way. I think you have to do a Minecraft movie in that graphical style. It's
Yeah.
just too iconic.
Oh yeah.
But then bring real Jason Momoa into it. So he's just like, hapless father of a Minecraft obsessed kid.
Mm.
It's a stormy night. His kid fell asleep at the computer,
Uh huh.
goes in, takes his kid, tucks him into bed, all that stuff. And then goes back to the computer to turn it off. Lightning strikes the house. Jason Momoa gets warped into the computer and
Oh.
then has to contend with the Minecraft world. And so he's like, I'm the largest man in the real world, but in this world, I must learn the ways of Minecraft in order to survive.
Wow. Okay, you should have written this movie.
I
This
know.
actually, have you seen? Have you seen? What year would this have been? 2019 Serenity.
Um, no, I did not.
Matthew McConaughey stars with
That's right.
Anne
Wait,
Hath.
but I know the
You
plot of this
have,
movie because it's bonkers.
yes,
I remember reading about it now
yes.
and being like, "What?
Oh yeah.
What?" Yeah, yeah. The twist is that Matthew McConaughey is like, his the actual like he's a guy or he's a kid's dad, but he died in real life, but he's in the video game. His kid like brought him back, and he's like living out a bunch of things involving his dad within this video game where he can play. Yeah, it's truly wild.
So I watched this in theaters. Not I knew there was a twist, and everyone the like buzz around that movie was, hey, there's a twist. Do not read what it is and just go see it. And it's a movie in which Matthew McConaughey is like a jilted like island bum just kind of shuttling from bar to bar. He has like god, who is it, Sissy Spacek, maybe, I don't remember who. He has like a lover on the island who he sees,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden his former wife arrives at the island and asks him to kill her husband,
Oh yeah, that's right.
who is
It gets even more bonkers because it's also just like,
yeah.
yeah, like an assassination plot.
Yeah, and her husband is played by an actor whose name I'm forgetting right now. He has like a perfectly love this guy. Perfectly like lumpy potato sack head. He plays a lot of like angry evil guys.
Yeah, 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 of course.
He's so good. Just wonderful, but I don't remember what his name is. Um, and he is just the most evil drunk in this movie. And about halfway in, Matthew McConaughey meets a Mr. Bean style character played by
Mhm.
the lead from Succession, whose name I'm also forgetting. I'm just at a loss for names today.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
mean, who cares about names?
yeah,
Also
whatever.
quickly, hey Hisham, or I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but hello. Oh yeah, I know, kind of weird timing to say that, but whatever.
No, Poggers always. What's
I
up?
mean, I would say
Uh,
that in general, the 2019 film Serenity warrants a poggers. It is, if
yeah,
nothing else, in its own unique way that has never been replicated and never will be, a very pog film.
yeah. That one also, if I remember correctly, had a very strange director attached to it. Someone with like a good pedigree, and then you
Right.
watch the movie and you were like, "Wait
And
a
you're like,
minute,
how did
what?
this happen?
Yeah, where, where did this come from?"
Yeah.
But yeah, the big twist, spoiler alert, is that the son of Anne Hathaway and Matthew McConaughey built a video game in which Matthew McConaughey is a character and he enacts the son's murder fantasy on the kid's stepdad,
Yeah.
who is evil and represented as evil in the game, which inspires the kid at the end to off the stepdad, which Matthew McConaughey does in the game by taking him out fishing and attaching him to like the biggest fish ever and then just tossing him into the ocean.
All of this is to say that this should be just like one to one the plot of the Minecraft movie too.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
featuring Jason Momoa. So I mean, like, I think that Jason Momoa with a little work, like, could convincingly play a McConaughey type. They both have kind of that rugged appeal. So
oh,
yeah, fantastic.
I'm very curious before we move on from Minecraft.
I mean, to be fair, we're just gonna move to another video game movie thing. So
Fair enough.
mhm.
There are kind of two tacks that I can see the Minecraft movie take, and I'm curious which one you think it's going to be.
All
There's
right.
one that is base survival game. It
Mhm.
is just like the story of the default Minecraft game. You are Steve, you're alone in the world, there's pigs and animals all over, you have to kill the Ender Dragon. Maybe there's like one other character. It's like a multiplayer version of the standard game.
Mhm.
Or there is a version of the movie that plays into the fact that Minecraft has accommodated everything at this point. It is like blocky Fortnite, essentially.
Right,
And you
right.
have a character who bounces around all of the world, who's like,
Oh,
oh, at some point I'm like hanging out with this crowd doing this one thing. At
right. So
another
we
point I'm
almost
doing
have like the Ready Player
survival.
One approach, basically.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Sort of a like,
Um,
is it
hmm.
going to be the kind of multiverse Minecraft, or are we getting standard vanilla Minecraft the movie?
I think mods can we get somebody to do something about OG Vader. Um, love your
uh,
name, but yeah, we're unfortunately not going to be able to
big
put up with that.
big Star Wars
Um,
fan.
yeah, right. Quoting Kylo Ren, I'm sure.
Mm,
But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think that we are kind of like people are experiencing crossover fever right now. Although I think people are
mm,
getting pretty worn out by that. Um, I mean, I think that Minecraft is big enough to stand on its own. I don't think it needs to do the crossover thing. And so
yeah,
bearing in mind that like crossovers would be more expensive and you can probably get I think Microsoft and Minecraft can get as much bang from their buck just being like, look, it's Minecraft.
yeah,
That I don't think they'll do crossovers. He's really passionate about gays. How sweet. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Good. Yeah. Thank you, OG Vader, for expressing your passion.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, no. So I mean, I think it'll be its own thing. We'll see. Maybe there could be some crossover elements. I mean, after
Mm,
all, um, they could try to do like a Minecraft extended universe. So have it only be Minecraft for the movie, then after credits, be like, oh, and here's something that implies that it's going to be connected to other universes in the next one. It's
yeah.
going to cross over with Sonic the Hedgehog now. We'll
That's
see.
that's what I'm. Are we getting like the Lego movie set in Minecraft?
Right, right. We very well could. Maybe at the very end, the credit singer will imply a crossover with It Takes Two,
Wow, what a
starring
transition!
The
Let's
Rock.
go.
Or if not starring The Rock, The Rock is producing it, which is interesting.
Hmm.
So yeah, It Takes Two is of course the popular EA published co-op game about a couple who's kind of come to the point at which they might get divorced, and
Hmm.
that's impacting their kid. And then, as a result of fantastical machinations, they get transported into the bodies of two dolls made by their kid, and they have to sort of figure out how to work their way out of that situation without getting killed by all sorts of wildlife and
Mm.
other trials and travails that come with being itsy bitsy as opposed to being normal human sized. Um, so, I mean, it was already a little surprising that this game is being adapted to a film because the game is already sort of on one hand, like it has a cinema like quality to it, in part because Josef Fares, who directed the game, comes from a film background.
Mm.
But then also, I think that a lot of what makes the game work is that it's playable. Um, the interesting thing about it is not its plot, which is serviceable but not amazing, but rather the fact that for it to work at all, you need two players at all times, and like it's got all of these different gameplay genres represented, and different players kind of like occupy different areas of that gameplay genre. In order for you to solve puzzles, one player has to like do kind of the action stuff, the other player has to do more puzzle solving elements within different worlds, within different genres,
Mm.
like third person shooting and things like that. So I mean, it's a very interesting co-op game. It's harder to see how it would work as just the film.
That's sort of what I wonder about all of this stuff that's happening, because the movies that you would, or the games that you would think would be pretty easy to adapt to film, are the games that are already severely indebted to movies,
Right,
like
right.
the Uncharted games, which were like, Uncharted is playable Indiana Jones, and then they made an
Mhm.
Uncharted movie, which is just like
Yeah. Just
it's this,
Indiana
like,
Jones,
back and
but
forth
junior.
transitive property thing, yeah, that they're doing. Um, and then when you get games that are good, that are received well for being games, that becomes a lot harder to transmit, to, like, cross to a different medium. Like,
Mhm.
Hades, really great game. Even you could,
I mean,
great
I think you could
story,
do a
good
good animated
characters.
movie with Hades.
You probably could, but you would lose, like, the thing that I think, it is not the thing that made the game, but it is an element, the replayability,
Mhm.
the fact that you're doing something over and over and over and over
I
again,
mean,
and you're
I think
refamiliarizing
mhm.
yourself with characters.
I think that you could do a pretty experimental format there where like so I mean, we've seen recent movies do a lot of like revisiting the same areas and scenes and locations, but like
Mm,
recontextualizing them. I
sure.
mean, I think you could argue that that's like all of everything everywhere all at once. So I could see a movie that kind of like leans into the idea of like, you know, the main character dying, coming back, talking to people, the same people over and over and over,
Mhm.
seeing different sides of them, ultimately overcoming being stuck in this loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could do something cool like that. So I mean, I think that that type of story, while it doesn't seem like on paper would work
Mm,
well in a more linear format,
mm.
I think that like you could do it. I think that like It Takes Two is a little bit more like you lose some of what makes it unique. Though,
Yeah.
I mean, you never know. Yeah. Hades starring The Rock as Zagreus in a jungle.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
The
wearing one of his, um, several 2 to 3 jungle outfits. Um
Yeah, the thought I had was that, and thank you, Prism, for sort of alluding to this. Like, It Takes Two, starring The Rock,
Mhm,
reminds me of the last movie The Rock was in, which was the movie with not Olivia Wilde,
mhm.
um, whose name I'm forgetting uh again.
Man, we are
But
0
it
for 0 on names today.
yeah, it was the movie that was based on the Disney park ride, like
Oh, yeah.
the
Yep.
Jungle Cruise or whatever it was. And that
Mhm.
just seems like this, but live action, where it's
Right,
like
right.
adventure and a, like, female counterpart who don't get along, and then sort of fall in love over time through getting through all of these
Yeah.
trials and tribulations.
Only
And
this time they fall back in love. So
okay, yeah. Um the very last thing on this, the I think you're right. You could make a good Hades movie. You probably make a good It 2 movie.
mhm,
I do not think video game movies are yet in that period in their, like, life cycle
mhm.
where this is going to get the requisite budget and attention to actually be good.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think that again, especially if it stars The Rock, which yeah, according to Hollywood Reporter's sources, or according to Variety sources rather,
Mm,
it could.
yeah.
But I mean, I think if it stars The Rock, then it won't necessarily be good, but it won't be bad either. It'll be one of
Mhm.
those middling quality Rock movies where, like,
Yeah.
it mostly leans on his charisma. And he's made a career out of this, like being in a lot of movies that are not amazing.
Yeah.
But he's just so charismatic and like fun to watch on screen that it's fine. It's a good
Yeah.
popcorn flick. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be another one of those. Only this time it'll be a property that a lot of gamers recognize, as opposed to people who enjoy going to Disney theme parks.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Let's see. What other things actually matter this week? I have to quickly jump over to something that excites me personally,
Sure.
which is that Sega is apparently rebooting Crazy Taxi and more importantly, Jet Set freaking Radio.
Mhm.
Um,
Now read the second part of that headline.
Let's see. To chase Fortnite riches. That's an interesting angle. Um, let's see. I'm interested in how they are incorporating that in because let's see. Two titles would be the first entries in Sega's Super Game Initiative, which the company announced a year ago as an effort to develop recurring revenue sources and build online communities around its software portfolio. Fortnite has become the role model for such games. Free to play, it's available across platforms. Hosts large multiplayer contests and includes extras like vehicles, construction, and social events on top of the usual combat, spurring player purchases of in-game items. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those reads kind of like a monkey paw.
Yeah, I'm very nervous that we're going the Jet Set Radio Battle Royale, and then they're going to close it down a month in. Just, ugh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that.
Mm,
But I also feel like, Jet Set Radio with a budget is pretty exciting to me.
sure.
I'm intrigued by what exactly they will do with it. And I mean, if nothing else, like if they're really going to go full battle royale, at least Jet Set Radio is an interesting template for it.
Yeah,
I feel like whatever form that would take would be something we haven't seen before necessarily.
sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I want to be optimistic.
Yeah.
If only because like I love Jet Set Radio. I love it dearly,
Hmm.
and seeing it revived in any capacity is to me an exciting prospect.
Yeah.
And if not, we do have oh god, what is that game called? Like Bomb Funk. Yeah, what is it? Bomb Rush
Bomb Rush
Cyberfunk.
Cyberpunk.
There we go.
Yeah.
Like I mean, even if we don't get a good actual licensed Jet Set Radio revival,
Hmm.
we are already getting one that looks. I mean, it's an indie, but it looks
Yeah.
real good. I mean, it looks just like Jet Set Radio.
Yeah. It's got some of the folks coming back from Jet Set Radio to work on this, right? Maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought that
I
maybe on the music,
think, yeah, no.
something going on.
I think, yeah, yeah. Here we go. An alternate future set to the musical brainwaves of Hideki Naganuma. Yeah,
Mm,
who I believe was the main musical mind behind Jet Set Radio. So I
nice.
mean, yeah. And then obviously they've nailed the style.
Uh huh.
And it's coming out this year. So,
Let's
again,
go.
um, if nothing else, even if Jet
Hmm.
Set Radio's revival is terrible or tries really hard to lean into modern trends and
Yeah.
then just does a terrible job of it, we'll still have this.
Yeah.
We will still
Prism
have Bomb Rush Cyberpunk.
Prism writes, honestly, a 30 to 99 lobby sounds like a crazy idea.
I mean,
And it's true. Yeah, I would honestly, I might get into that.
you
I
know
could
what?
seriously get into that.
Honestly, that sounds a little too crazy for me. I want normal taxi.
I was about to
Not
say,
crazy
yeah,
taxi, just give me normal taxi.
yeah. I would like staid plaintive taxi, maybe.
Yeah, no, you just you drive around, traffic isn't great, but you know, I want normal taxi colon, it's a living.
Yeah, exactly. The papers please of crazy taxi.
Yeah. Okay, well, take that advice from us. Whoever is working at Sega, make it happen.
Mm,
We'll play it. Let's see. In news that, oh yeah, I can relate that to Jet Set Radio easy. Um, alpha footage of Skate 4 leaked today.
mm,
And obviously, people have been waiting forever for Skate 4. I think this is another one where people, the name has people very enticed, but at the same time, it's like, what will it capture the same spirit
yeah.
as the original Skate games? This is obviously incredibly early footage.
Hmm.
I mean, this is gray box stuff,
Oh yeah.
but nonetheless, I mean, it looks, at least in terms of animation and movement, like Skate.
Yeah.
The movement looks very fluid and natural. You can hop off your board, you can get back
Mhm.
on it. Yeah, I mean, I think that, if this is the kind of starting point, then it seems like a good one.
Yeah, even what Jeff is writing in
Mhm.
his tweet of like, yeah, they're trying to recapture that same feeling. If that is the starting point goal, I don't care if they're in gray box right now. I don't care how far along that game is. Like, just keep working at it. Like, get as close to that as you can, and then build from there. I'm perfectly happy with that. I hope at the very least that nobody's looking at the footage in the tweet and going like, oh, it's like it doesn't look ready, it doesn't look any good. And I hope the
Right.
response is exactly as you articulate. This is great. Let's get that feel down. I hope
Hmm.
that's what this becomes.
I also like the part of this animation where it's just like a guy doing a front flip off a wall and just
Yeah.
absolutely eating it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Also, gotta return to a previous topic for a second because
Mhm.
Prism just said neurotypical taxi,
Yes. Yes. That
which
would be
also implies the existence of another game in this hypothetical series, neurodivergent taxi.
Yes.
So like your kind of Papers, Please-esque taxi cab driver could be saddled with any number of kind of neurodivergent characteristics, not in
Mm.
a disrespectful way, mind you.
Yeah.
This would be a game that would be very much about kind of living with whichever of these things you might have going on, and kind of occupying the headspace of a character like that, and just
Mm.
sort of experiencing their daily life while being a taxi driver.
I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, we've got to get this over to the portion of WaPo that's making games that are otherwise, made to be kind of like to have Wordle accessibility. And we'll be like, well,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
so to begin, give us about $30 million. We'll need that just to kind of like get up to speed, spend things up, hire people, get this through R&D, kind of figure out what our main gameplay systems look like. Then give us another 60 million, and we can kind of go into production.
I'm loving the idea of like the post striking back at the times with its own
Yeah,
version
you
of
have
Wordle
Wordle.
that's just
We have
crazy taxi.
neurodivergent taxi.
Yeah, exactly. And just for a whole year, or for a couple of months, everyone is coming out with crazy taxi spin-offs. It's just like Slate buys like hot take taxi or something like that. I don't know.
Right. Hurdle taxi.
Exactly, exactly. You have to recognize what the song is on the radio in the taxi, or else the cab driver will like do a stunt that will make you feel bad.
Yeah, no. Or else the cab driver won't let you get out because they're very obsessed with just like running you through their playlist.
Oh,
You're like, "Oh
it's
man, I really love this like, this is a pretty famous song by Goldfinger. Like you've
yeah.
almost certainly heard it. Come
Oh
on.
yeah.
You know this is Tony Hawk."
It's Cash Cab plus Crazy Taxi plus Hurdle.
Sure.
That's the next, yeah, that's a
Yeah,
million
yeah.
dollar idea.
Oh yeah, we can pitch this to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, we're going to do it. In the meantime, speaking of pitches that to me on paper sound great, but
Mhm.
we're already shot down once. Amy Hennig is back to making Star Wars.
Yeah.
So yeah, for the uninitiated, she was already attached to another Star Wars game that ended up getting canceled in 2017. It was
Mhm.
codenamed Ragtag. It was, narrative focused, single player. So in her wheelhouse, because Amy Hennig is known for working on the Uncharted games.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it just never really fully got off the ground. And then she worked on other things for a little bit, and now she's back on working on Star Wars, which is interesting. I think that people were very disappointed to see that her narrative-driven Star Wars game was canceled, and so the announcement says the new project is a narrative-driven action adventure featuring an original story in the Star Wars galaxy,
Yeah.
not unlike Ragtag. So, I guess do-overs.
I wonder if that's an expression of confidence in like Amy specifically in the original Ragtag. Who I don't know how to read the tea leaves in this situation. I don't know if this is a reassessment of the Star Wars strategy in the wake of the sequel trilogy. No idea. But all in all, I'm just excited for whatever this is going to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, like if the pitch is basically Uncharted Star Wars, then I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think you need to overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Give the people what they want.
Yep.
Yeah. Again, this seems like another project that's pretty early, so we will see what form it ultimately takes.
Yeah.
But it's hopeful. A new hopeful, perhaps you could say.
All right. Okay, come on now.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. Um, Not much more to say there at this point.
Yeah, hold on,
Um,
wait. You might say I've got a good feeling about this.
eh, oh man,
Yay.
not to keep going back to this crazy walking. I love that idea too because
Yeah.
especially if you pair it with like a sort of oh man, what is the game where you're bad at walking? Um,
Quap?
yeah, a QWOP like system. Although
Yes.
you could argue that this is just Death Stranding. We're just describing Death
Yeah.
Stranding now.
Yeah,
I
crazy walking is literally stranding.
Yeah, I think that we need a new like you know how there were all those old internet laws of like Godwin's law and stuff like that eventually just
Yeah,
arrived
yeah.
back at Nazis. I think you need one for game design where eventually if you like over scope and over discuss it an idea for a while, you just make
Yeah.
Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did it. Let's see. Other things that have happened this week that are interesting that I want to hit as we start to wind down.
Mm.
Let's see. Well, I just wanted to kind of point to the fact that I published the story on Ironmouse this week,
Mhm.
and it's really good, and you should read it. Um, but yeah, I think that it's worth pointing to for a couple of reasons. One is that VTubers are obviously becoming part of Twitch's mainstream in a very big
Mhm.
way, as evidenced by the fact that Ironmouse, in doing a marathon stream for 31 days, broke a lot of records, not just for VTubers, but for streamers in general,
Mhm.
in terms of overall subscriptions um, for a female streamer and in terms of like followers for VTubers, all of this stuff. And I think that that's especially relevant because while she did that marathon earlier this year, there's been a ton of VTubers around or a ton of discourse around VTubers recently, in part because a bunch of major streamers have been misusing the VTuber tag on Twitch.
Mm.
They've been streaming into it even though they themselves are not VTubers, which has led to quite a bit of drama on Twitch. So let's see. XQC has had opinions on this because he's been doing it,
Mhm.
and he's made it clear that he doesn't care that he's been getting blowback for it. Let's see. He said, "Let's stop the hypocrisy. People have been misusing sections and tags since the beginning of time, um, himself included. He used to misuse like he used to stream into various incorrect categories when not doing those things. So this is not new for him."
Yeah.
He says the reality is nobody should give a beep. If you're
Yep.
mad, you're the only person who cares. Clearly, he's not the only person who cares. I think VTubers care a lot about this because while they are gaining popularity on Twitch, they're still definitely not as big as people like XQC by a long shot.
Yeah.
Um, and like tags are a way to be discovered. Because if you click on a tag on Twitch, then you get taken to a section that ideally has a bunch of other streamers like that, and you can find more.
Yeah.
So these like already successful streamers using those tags and kind of being at the top of a category makes it harder for streamers who are actually part of that category to be discovered. And Twitch is a platform in which it is incredibly hard to be discovered already.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
I
launch your staff subathon when let's just stream for 31 days. That'll be great. We don't have anything else to do.
I
Um,
I am curious about the degree to which, like, the tags actually matter for discoverability. I'll just say that once when I was streaming, I think I had music in my tags because now and again I like will just pick up a guitar and play music on stream in like downtime. Um and somebody was in chat just like, "Oh, I found you through the music tab, but you're playing Valorant right now. What's going on?" And I had not even thought about that. It caught me totally off guard. And I also didn't anticipate being found in that way. So, but I don't think stats like that exist, or I don't think Twitch discloses how many people are found through the tag sections.
yeah, I mean, it's an inelegant solution to a platform-wide problem, right?
Yeah.
In that, like, you will not get discovered much through using tags, but it's something. And
Hmm.
it's also something for finding people who are doing the same thing as you and collaborating as them or collaborating
Hmm.
with them. So I mean, like, it's not gonna, I would not say at this point in Twitch's lifetime that tags are make or break.
Hmm.
Um, but they're a tool. They are one among many.
Yeah.
And so it's just this thing where like, it's kind of insult to injury.
Hmm.
You have these streamers who are like, they don't need to do this. There's no reason for them to stream into the VTuber tag except just to, be tongue in cheek. They gain nothing from it.
Yeah.
And yet they're like, they're, planting their feet and saying, no, you can't stop me. Like I'm allowed to do this, so I'm going to.
Yeah.
So, you know. um, and I think that it just speaks more broadly to like a level of skepticism around VTubers from more traditional big streamers.
Hmm.
You already saw this. It's part of my article. Is that right after Iron Mouse sort of had her big moment? There was a bigger streamer, or big-ish streamer, a very controversial one, named Quinn69, who went on this big rant saying that VTubers are cheating because they don't need to do anything to appear presentable on camera. They pretend to be 13 and put on some fake cringe voice to create parasocial relationships with desperate, he said weebs, I said anime fans to translate it for the post's audience.
Yeah.
Um,
There
I got
was
so close to getting the word weeb on the Washington Post, so I am disappointed about that.
I was
Um,
actually a tiny bit of history here. There was a review we were going to publish with the word weeb in the headline.
hmm,
And at the very last second, we changed it because the writer was like, I'm not sure we should use that word
bummer.
because it can have like negative connotations sometimes. And I mean,
And
in
I'll
the
just say
context
I
of
don't
this
want to
quote,
make them proud, so,
okay,
weebs are
fair enough.
reclaiming it.
But I had looked at the time, I was wondering, like, has weeb ever appeared in the post before? And I think it has once or twice when somebody named Weeb with the last name Weeb was cited.
Mhm.
Or, yeah, that's who I'm thinking of.
Oh my god, I can't believe there's just a headline on the Post that's, "Thanks, weeb."
Yeah.
Man, okay, so the next time somebody says anything even vaguely weeby to me on Twitter, I'm screenshotting this and just sending it to them.
Yeah.
That's it. My
That's
god,
right.
this is an incredible resource. I had no idea this existed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. So here we go. We have some actual weeb related stories. Anime and manga take center at the Olympics.
I will
I'm
say,
guessing
though,
that weeb is somewhere in there. Let's just control
I
F that to
don't
be sure.
see it in the text. Yeah.
Oh, then this is just great SEO.
Yeah, I'm curious. Maybe it could be in the comments, which are not unfurled
Oh,
automatically.
yeah. Okay, here we go. That almost certainly explains it. I mean, like, let's put this one to rest once and for all.
Yeah. Let's see. 33
33.
surely
Yeah,
somewhere in
somebody
those
said weeb in
33
here.
somebody said weeb.
No?
Keep going, keep going. No, no, no. That
Oh,
doesn't
you gotta
unfurl
go
it all
further
the
down.
way. You doing I think load
Load
more.
more.
Yeah.
Come
Okay,
on.
that's everything.
Wow. No,
Nothing.
this is just the Google algorithm has gotten so sophisticated
Wow.
that it knows what weeb is
Huh.
and knows to just tie it to anime.
All right.
Wow. Man, we have learned a lot here today.
So in chat, somebody thinks thanks weeb is purposeful. I don't think in 1998 anyone at the Post was thinking about weebs.
No.
I know we're very advanced now, what with our video game section and whatnot, and our Ironmouse profiles, but I don't think in 1998 they were thinking about weebs quite the same way we do today.
Yeah, no, probably not. I mean, this story could have been written by a time traveler, bear in mind.
Yeah.
Um, and like, to be honest, if I could travel through time, I'd do something like this.
Yep.
Yeah, just put "Thanks, Weeb" as a headline on a story in 1998. Of course I would. That's like
it's
the
the
first thing I'd do. Maybe
it's
I
a
did this.
Oh, it's that Back to the Future thing of like, you don't get it, but your kids are gonna love it. Where people in 1998 were not ready, but now, uh, 20 years, however many years later, yeah, something years later, we're
Mhm.
really loving this headline.
We are. Wow. Yeah, I'll sneak in "Weeb" in my next article, yes.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but anyway, all of this is to say, there's been a lot of discourse around VTubers recently, simply because there's all this, like, kind of uncertainty about them. And I think that, big streamers are kind of feeling some pressure, perhaps because it's a bandwagon they're not part of.
mm,
Um, yeah, things like that. Because there is like also this interesting thing of like, there's certainly overlap between major streamers and the fan bases of major VTubers. But there's also a pretty big, just like discrete VTuber community of people
yeah,
who follow almost exclusively VTubers and like are extremely fluent in all the lore surrounding different VTubers,
hmm,
and follow all the different collabs between certain VTubers, follow all of the ones attached to different like VTuber agencies. So all the streamers attached to HoloLive, all the streamers attached to VShojo, and so on and so forth. So I mean, it is this thing of like VTubers entering the Twitch mainstream consciousness on one hand, but there's still this like sort of interesting fragmentation.
yeah,
Um, and then yeah, it's also just like something that feels different. VTubers have only really been around in a major way since 2016. So I mean, there's still like a newer element. And so I think that a thing that Ironmouse put words to very
hmm,
well is she was like, this is just the nature of something new getting popular.
hmm,
She talked about how, yeah, her quote was, you can say the same thing about streaming years ago. All the adults were like, oh my God, it's so strange. Why are you watching that? And she also said in our interview, she was like, and now people are just used to it.
yeah,
And she said, and it's okay if people don't end up getting it because there's always going to be some stuff people just don't get,
yep,
which is a very like live and let live response that I appreciate.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, read the rest of my piece. I'm proud of it. People seem to like it quite a bit. So, go do that.
It's in
Um,
chat and it's on the homepage at launcher.gg if you want to find it.
hooray. Let's see. To go ahead and wind down for the week, we got a couple things that are, of the fun variety because I like
Mm.
to end streams with fun, dumb things. Um, so let's see. Let's go ahead and start with which of these things? They're all so good. Um, gonna go ahead and say let's do this one because it's a story. This is
Mm.
one of those stories that just feels like it's not generated by an algorithm, but just like what are the odds of all of these things going into a headline?
Yeah.
Anyway, so what we have here is Star Fox actor comes out of retirement for a Half-Life 2 mod that replaces Alex, who's of course the main side character in the game, with a
Mm.
sexy blue fox. So yeah,
Wonderful.
yep, this is Estelle Ellis, the original voice of Crystal, who was a character in Star Fox. Has not voiced a game character since 2005, but came back so that you could have a version of her character in Half-Life, which is just really, in my opinion, a fantastic reason
Hmm.
So
to
you can
kind of,
hold the obelisk
revisit an
safely
old
here.
career.
We're working on a much better way, though. Hmm. Here, check this out.
Again, I would
Wonderful.
say that on our
I'm
stream
really
today,
glad you can
furries are
make it.
eating real good.
Oh,
We
yeah.
could really use your
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, I just really wanted to
Aw.
appeal to our furry audience today between the dragons and this. I was just like,
Oh, yeah.
I feel like they've been overlooked, misunderstood, mistreated.
Come out of there!
So
Oh,
this is my
everything
gift.
all right,
Oh,
Dr. Kleiner?
hello, Alex.
You're welcome,
Almost
everyone.
all right. Lamar has gotten out of her crate.
The really funny thing about this to me is that Alex's voice would have sufficed just fine. I mean,
think
otherwise
so, yeah.
people are treating her like Alex in the game world. You could have just used the original voice files. You didn't need to get the
You're
original
right, Mikhail. I was
actress.
there to save
And
you.
yet they went so above and beyond.
Dr. Freeman.
It's a level of commitment that we just love to see in our games.
Uh-huh. And we love to see in our like otherwise unneeded fan projects.
Oh, yeah.
The final piece for our resurrected teleport.
There we go.
Oh, no.
We have that.
Don't do anything.
Nonsense.
Yet another beautiful product of the internet having
Say that.
just completely run wild. I mean, let's be real. Every day there's a new thing like this now. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I think there was an era of the internet where you'd get one of these like, once every handful of weeks or months.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, no, it's just par for the course. Yep. Somebody brought a voice actor out of retirement to be featured in their weird furry mod.
I feel like
Yep.
Skyrim
It's Tuesday.
did a lot of this. We're just like every couple of days you'd learn about some new mod. It was always a treat.
Yep. So yeah, there's that. That's one thing. The other thing is that somebody posted about their Elden Ring nails,
Oh, yeah.
and I love this. I mean, for one, because they're really good. This is some
Yeah.
extremely good artwork. Um, I want them. I get my nails done. So
Mm,
yeah. I legitimately am probably going to get. So my plan um is that I'm going to get a site of grace, this one
mm,
right here,
yeah.
painted on at least one of my nails. And then I'm going to, as I said on Twitter, I'm going to reach out to people and be like, touch Grayson, because that's my name. And then they're going to have to be like,
Boo.
what Mikhail is doing right here.
Yeah.
But they're also going to be like, you committed to it, so I must participate in your bad idea.
Fair enough.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I personally am excited about this endeavor. I'm excited enough that like, getting my nails done like this is probably going to cost, I don't know, 50, 80, maybe $100. So
Sure.
yeah, but it'll be worth it. I'm pretty excited. So let's see. Closing out, I'm actually going to bring up something that you brought to my attention, Mikhail, albeit
Oh, boy.
indirectly.
Okay.
Which is that so the Washington Post paywall is down through Friday night. That unto itself is something that I wanted to share with everybody in the audience. Currently, you can read any story on the Post for free, so go do that. And then, yeah. So, Mikhail, you retweeted this yesterday, and I was like, oh,
Hmm.
you know, I obviously want to share some cool stories we've done. So I went through this thread, and yeah. So here's a bunch of just really great stories that we've done. Good starting point for
Hmm.
anyone who would like to peruse the post while the paywall is down.
Wonderful story. And I remember when it came out, what a joy it was to read. And I would
Hmm.
recommend it to anyone who wants to
What are you
take
talking about?
advantage
These
of
are
the
all different
post's paywall
stories.
being done.
We
Well,
have
yeah,
this
that's
one
what I
story
meant.
about. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, this one is the last big group social function before the pandemic in 2020. Have another
Hmm.
one about how people handle snacking before going to the movies. Let's see another story about people who decided to transcend this mortal plane and touch God. I
Hmm.
mean, who wouldn't want to read about that? Fascinating stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, let's see. Enterprising medical researcher found the groundbreaking topic for her thesis. Yeah, I mean, just every one of these stories, phenomenal stuff.
Yeah.
So be sure to check out this thread, click through on any one of these different and diverse stories
Hmm.
during the time in which the post's paywall is down, which again is until Friday night.
Yeah.
So yeah, check that out. In the meantime, you can always read Launcher without having to go through a paywall. That's something that you should do for all of your video game coverage needs. And also, you can always watch us every Thursday at 4 p.m. ET on this very channel, discussing the latest video game news. Oh, wait, let's see. Oh, okay. Well, that's some sad news that I have to. Yeah, Hisham just said not to be gloomy, but if I'm not mistaken, it says Richard Estrada, the author who used Weeb in that Washington Post article headline, passed away in 1999. Rip to a
Oh,
legend. That
that
is,
is a shame.
yeah, rip to a legend for sure. Um, anyway, yeah, so we do Washington Post Story Mode every Thursday at 4 p.m. ET. Be doing it next week too. I've been Nathan Grayson. Typically, I'm joined by Shannon Liao, but today I was joined by Mikhail, who is always a delight to have around.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so we'll be back in some capacity, whether it's with Shannon or Mikhail or some mysterious third guest. Who
oh
knows?
yeah.
We'll be back next week. Until then, thanks for sticking with us, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.